Crouch. Bind. Set.
Joe presents the House of Rugby, together with Guinness.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of House of Rugby, brought to you by Joe, together with our very good friends at Guinness, along for this week's magical mystery tour throughout the world of rugby. It is a very warm welcome to two former England captains, one of the 15s, one of the 7s. The Lord has ascended to the throne this week in the absence of Mr. James Haskell. And you've been into your dressing up box as well, Tins. Thank you very much indeed. We all look resplendent in Christmas jumpers.
I thought we should do nice Christmas jumpers this week. Next week I got something a little bit special for you.
Good man. We wait with bated breath to see what you bring next week. You look like one of Santa's little helpers this week. Rob Vickerman. How are you?
Fantastic, thank you. Very good. I'm actually part way through a rugby celebrity fitness regime, believe it or not. Not Haskell, who isn't here.
Yeah.
But I did a little bit of digging and I found someone else who's come up with a rugby celebrity.
Who is this?
Well, it's interesting actually, quite close to home, I must say.
Go on.
Because I got some images of this guy that was
God,
in all right nick before.
Sake.
So this is him before, believe it or not. Teflon here, non-stick, and then afterwards, take a look at this rig.
I know, the griddle pan, I know.
Look at it.
For our listeners,
Yes,
I'm
sorry,
being
listeners.
rinsed for a before and after. That was about 10 years ago, actually.
BBC versus Sky. Look who won the competition.
It was, yeah.
Ripped up Payne.
Top. It was the Men's Health six-pack challenge, and it was about the most miserable 2 months of my entire life.
And it looks like you've settled back into your old body.
Oh, I've still got the cattle grid for those that want it. Well hidden these days.
Thank you.
Why have you been Googling me on the internet? That's the bigger question.
Because you are Teflon. You do all the probing
Shit
and no
don't
one
stick.
ever gets you stick. And I thought, well, here we go. I found it. Let's get it out there. And actually, fair play, mate. You're pretty ripped with a good 4-pack there.
Thanks. Yeah.
You didn't get rid of the dad bod, the last two. Tough to get the last two.
Yeah, it is.
Looking good.
I did nothing but eat tuna and quinoa, whatever it's called, and porridge with oats. It was. I don't know how you boys dedicated your lives
so
to
much
such
fun. I'm pretty sure I never ate that.
No, you probably went around the back and did a few other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's on quinoa now, though. But no, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for the early humiliation. And obviously, it's going to be a little bit quieter this week, which is lovely. And we're hopefully going to talk about some rugby this week as well, which is a rarity for House of Rugby.
Say quieter. He was pretty quiet last week.
Yes. He was good, Ryan, wasn't he?
He was good. Kept him under his radar.
But we're obviously talking about the absence of our friend James Haskell, who this week hasn't sent a video in, which is something in itself. I should think he's fairly busy on his honeymoon.
I'm
if you know what I
amazed
mean.
there's no selfie at the altar or
Yeah, you would have thought so. But
live streaming.
Well, the reason he hasn't been able to do
I'm amazed he hasn't live streamed.
The reason he hasn't been able to do that is, and I'm going to draw your attention, those who are missing Hask's banter, to December the 31st. Put the date in your diary, because that is the date that Hask's Hello magazine comes out with coverage of the big wedding to the lovely Chloe. And those that know him as the Archbishop of Banter, I've just got a couple of quotes to tease your anticipation.
There's only
before
one
the big mag
person who
drops.
knows him as the Archbishop of Banter,
And that's himself. I know. Those of you who know him as one of the sort of sharp-tongued shooters of the game of rugby union, have a listen to this and see if you identify with Mr. James Haskell. My mum always told me, he said, I should meet a nice girl who wanted to look after me, and that's Chloe. Planning the rest of my life with her is exciting, and I couldn't be happier. Doesn't that sound like how?
That is a straight quote from him, isn't it?
You can see him really sort of thinking long and hard about that. Chloe comes in as well, and some lovely words from her. Our relationship just gets stronger and stronger, says the new Mrs. Haskell. James is funny, smart, articulate, and always a gentleman. And I think he's been done on the trade descriptions out there. Those are not words I would associate with James Haskell having done 11 shows
that
at House
Chloe
of
used
Rugby.
to. Chloe has shared with me about
Whoever is doing their PR is doing a wonderful job.
Yeah.
But those of you who are missing Hass this week, we've got a photo on the desk of him, and you can get your fill of him on December the 31st with Hello magazine. Many congratulations to the happy couple, though.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we really enjoyed the ceremony.
We had a lovely time, didn't we? Dialing in via
invite, Rob?
social media.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
No one. Absolutely no one.
We should have gate
No
crashed,
one.
actually.
Anyone from Joe? No?
No.
Dead to us.
Interestingly, he got married 2 days ago and said he was going to be here this evening, which is 48 hours after his wedding on Sunday. But I think Chloe's obviously seen sense and said, we'll do some honeymooning instead.
You don't want to start in the doghouse, do you?
No,
I mean, there'll be plenty of chance.
You'll end up there soon enough, Hask. We miss you. We'll see you soon. Many congratulations, obviously, from all of us. But in your absence, the beautiful thing is we are going to get stuck into some rugby. So we're going to touch on a few big topics tonight. What has gone wrong at Leicester, who've slipped to their 8th straight defeat? We'll look back on another hugely disappointing European Cup weekend for the English clubs. What is going wrong for all bar Saracens? And we'll pick up on Ellis Genge's comments about class in rugby and ask why almost 2/3 of players suffer mental health problems after retirement. big, juicy topics. Not hugely festive, but certainly very interesting. Let's start with the Tigers, though, because obviously the news just before we started recording this is that Jordan Murphy has moved from interim to the new official head coach, being given the backing of Peter Tom. Given the fact they're on an 8-game losing run, what do you make of the decision to appoint Jordan as the man to go forward with?
But where do they go?
Well, that's a very good question. That's not the question I'm asking you. The question is, what do you make of the decision to give it to Jordan?
Look, I think if you look at that coaching group that they've got with Deeks and the other guys, they are inexperienced, but they know what they know what it is to win in Leicester colours, win numerous titles.
Yeah.
I don't actually think, when I go back over the results, and we were just talking about it, that they're playing that bad. They just have a really leaky defence at the moment. Their tackle percentage is way down where you'd want it to be.
Yeah.
And they're missing shots at goal. But I don't see what their other options were. I think there's other issues where maybe a hire in terms of the board. There's a lot of chat around, sort of Jed Glynn there and people who maybe you could find better personnel for as well. But I think you've got to give them a crack. I don't understand where you'd go, where you'd try and pull someone in from now anyway.
Yeah.
That's going to revolutionise. So it's funny because I was reading sort of the Leicester fan website before, and all it seems to be that when we put some new ones in, there might be some uncertainty. They were talking about players having uncertainty with an interim to this. Then you hear like Mourinho gets sacked today, and they're like, all the players will be buzzing now because finally they've got rid of him.
Yeah. Did you see Pogba's post off the back of it?
It's just ridiculous. It just doesn't work that way. All the rugby players actually want a bit of stability. They don't want a fresh face straight off the thing. So, I think Jordan he's got a good rugby brain on him, and he'll figure it out. I mean, it is a bit of a. They just haven't had the results. But you look through their matches, they could have had things go the other way. I mean, even on the weekend, they were outdone completely by
34-11 at home.
I know, but they were in it for bits. But every time they make a mistake, it's a try.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. Other teams are making mistakes and covering it up. When they make a mistake, it's 7 points, and that's something that's an art that they've got to learn to get back.
They're in a rut at the moment, aren't they? And actually, the Man United analogy is quite an interesting one, because when we were all growing up, there were sort of times where you thought, will anyone ever lift the trophy other than Manchester United? And Leicester with the 4 on the bounce, didn't they?
It's interesting because that is leading the line about this chaos that they're supposedly in. I mean, the reality is, they've lost the last 8. 3 of them were in the Premiership Cup. Yeah. 2 of them were in Europe against one of the best teams in Europe. Actually, they're 3 out of 5 in Premiership games. It's not overly bad, but there's so many people who have seen Leicester being dominant for that long that they're digging the knife in going, finally, we've got something to go at them with.
You've only got to go back to that Scarlets game where they played and they were untouchable in the Scarlets game. So they have got performance, they have got players in there. I think issue-wise, it's probably they're not what Leicester used to be in terms of a pack that could win you a game on its own. Yeah. It sort of seems to have flipped around where they expect their backs to win them a game, but if their line-outs aren't working right, I looked at the weekend and their line-out and scrum was pretty poor in terms of statistically. Yeah. So then, that makes it hard for your backs to ever win the game. Yeah. Normally, the old adage of forwards win your games, backs dictate by how much, so you still need that pack to pull its weight a bit.
Bring back Jono, get the old ABC club going again.
When you say that, do you think the club has lost some of its identity? They were so... they were so identifiable, is the word I was going to use. Yeah. In the day of the ABC Club, Garforth, Cockerell, Roundtree, Jono,
keep going.
Poole,
all of them.
Wells,
Shooter,
Richards back. I mean, you could pick the team for a decade and it barely changed. Adel Cardooni, Jez Harris. I mean, do you...
Dusty hair.
Well, now we are going back in time. Yeah. Woodward. But I mean, have they become sort of too transient? There's been too much change.
Yeah, and I think they have. There've been 3 head coaches in the last 18 months. That's a lot of change for a club.
4
that's
now.
Absolutely
Cockerell,
dominant.
Major, O'Connor, and now Murphy.
Exactly. So 3 have gone, and it's staggering.
Cockerell's gone, and he's gone to Edinburgh. Edinburgh are pretty good at the moment.
Yeah, Major's gone to the Highlanders, and they're beginning to come back.
Where did it all go wrong?
Yeah. But it is, and that's why...
I think he's probably smiling.
Yeah. In the press release, when you read it about Peter Tom's blessing, the next line is, and Jordan Murphy, who played for 15 years and coached for 6 years, 21 years of Tigers history, he's won over X amount of games for Leicester. They're trying to bring back this aura that clearly they don't have. They lost at home to Worcester and to Sale, which wouldn't normally happen in any competition. So clearly there's that feeling that the aura has gone. And I think it's good for rugby, because if the same team wins and dominate every year, it just gets a bit boring.
I remember at the start of the year going through the Leicester, and it mainly does fall down to the forwards pack. and going. Normally, when I used to play and look through it, I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
What
would they like to play against in their
I know I'm going to get hit by him. I know I'm going to get, Garforth's going to do that. I know Roundtree's going to do that. And you literally go up there knowing that you're in for a fight. Whereas if you look at that team now, and I think that's just the nature of rugby that it is now and how we've cleaned up the sport a little bit, which is for the better, that you can't really...
At the demise of Leicester.
That old school Leicester doesn't really fit,
They'd all end up banned.
Yeah, well, literally, Garforth would not play a game.
Yeah. Go back to his French polishing, or whatever it was that he did on the side.
It's scaffolded.
It's scaffolded. That's, we did a game the other day, and we were at Nottingham, and Garforth Scaffolding had provided the scaffolding for our studio. What goes around comes around. Anyway.
Please tell me it's called ABC scaffolding.
I think it's called Garforth Scaffolding.
Oh,
Ronseal says what it does on the tin.
But the question
missed out on the marketing plan.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he? It is an intimidating place to play, partly because it's such a small pitch. The first time we played there at Newcastle, with the new stand got built, 22,000 people were there. I mean, it's an insane crowd who all know their rugby. That is intimidating, which adds to the amount of heat they're getting because the supporters expect them to win. The press expects them to win. Suddenly they're not in a great position and everybody's sticking that knife in. So a lot of pressure. And when your coach comes out and says they're at their lowest ebb in terms of their confidence, players group, they read the press. They know that's coming at them.
Horrific, horrible, the lowest ebb, with Jordan's exact words after the defeat. I'd love to know what it must be like in that environment. Did you have you had that year with Bath where you got quite close to relegation. I mean, what is it like to be in an environment, particularly... And you were there with Bath when they were a big club, when they began to sort of slide towards the bottom end of the table. What are these players going to be going through right now?
We sort of chatted about it, didn't we, on a couple of podcasts ago? But it's difficult because you expect it, and he talked about training, and you want to train harder. That not necessarily doesn't solve the problem. It gives you a soundbite to say to the media in the fact that we're training this amount of time, this amount of believers are trying to change it. But sometimes you just need to get people away from it and actually just get them to relax a little bit, which is harder than
How would you do that?
Every player thinks it. Well, I don't know. You can give them
a lock-in.
But no, you could do a lock-in in the good old days, because then you come out of that going, Jesus, I know I need to perform if you've got smashed. But you could give them 2 days off. You give people 2 days off, 3 days off, half a week off. They'll come in and they go, oh my God, we're so underprepared that we've got to go out and perform. And sometimes it works that way. And I've also been in with coaches who go, right, we're just going to train and get right. But that doesn't work, because if you put all your heart and soul into that training and then you don't get a result on Saturday, you're even more deflated.
I love the fact you've asked Tins about relegation. If I was a mastermind, my specialist subject would be relegation battles.
Were you relegated?
Twice.
With Leeds and Newcastle?
Newcastle didn't get relegated the year I was there, but you're constantly in this horrible position. Went from playing in the Heineken Cup when they won the Power Gents, so qualified through the back door, playing against like Cardiff and Perpignan and doing well, to then being relegated, seeing grown men in a room cry because their lives have all absolutely fallen to pieces. Went down to, as a club, 6 players were left at the beginning of pre-season when Stuart Lancaster got his first opportunity to coach. And they're going, relegation, savage. That's why the ring fencing chat comes around, and I'm quite vocal about it, because it's no way to live in sport. Everyone's like, oh, you need relegation.
Are you anti-relegation?
I am, purely because there's only 14 teams that actually want to play Premiership Rugby. But aside from this being a different topic, relegation is savage. You're constantly looking over your shoulder. You lose trust and faith in everyone around you when all you need is that collective sense of purpose and understanding. It is brutal. So for them to be going down a dip, they've got to know, like Tim says, actually, it's not always smashing it, working harder. It's just having a little bit more confidence.
But the argument is, everything you've described there is the essence of sport. And ultimately, it is only sport. So if you start removing that, what would your career have been without the dramas?
I don't think you can just say it is only sport, because it's not when it's your livelihood. It's more that it sort of transcends just being
but I
sport,
suppose in that regard, any job is you're accountable to performance.
Yes, of course you are, and that is true. But most of the time you don't do it on a very public scale, do you?
Well, some you do, listed companies and whatever. I don't know. I don't want to get into the boring necessities of. But I'm interested that you're anti it.
Yeah, no, I am, because if you want to grow a game, you need a little bit of sustainability. I'm not saying ring fence full stop. I'm saying 3-year trial period, get Irish back up, see who wants to fill the void. Ealing don't want to go up anyway. They've made that quite clear and obvious. So for me,
have they?
Yeah, they're basically saying, well, McCafferty kicked back at them. There's only really Carnegie that would be in a position previously, but now the resources have gone. So you got to look now at, say, 7 million.
The Pirates have spent 7 years trying to find a stadium in Cornwall, and they're building
that's
towards
been
something
passed.
interesting.
Yeah, so and again, that's what I mean. I would cite them as a team who'd want to go up in a region that desperately needs it.
Yeah.
So I'd say, Yorkshire and Cornwall, perfect.
Yeah,
Why not look
and
at
London
that?
Irish.
But
So
then
you've got 3 at the top.
Yeah, the problem with ring fencing, and this is what it all comes back to, is people who say it's sport, it's the type of free market where you need rise and fall. I had a pretty heated debate on air with Pat Sanderson about it once. But as I go, look, if you want to grow a game, if you want to get to a position where England are providing with better players, then you've got to look at that New Zealand model where they are all growing the game collectively. There is no relegation. You can play different style of rugby knowing that it's going to get everyone enjoying their rugby. And I know you say romantically you need to get rid of it, but if you look from what's going to happen in the Premiership this year, round about February, March, the game plans will rescind because there is so much fear of being that bottom club in a league that's pretty hard to call who's going to go down.
It's going to be spectacular viewing, though. And get
Which is
bums
the
on seats.
broadcaster.
Well,
Yeah, but it's going to get bums on seats. It's going to get
Absolutely.
coverage and headlines and.
Exactly, that's the marketable side of it. Is when maybe you've only got two teams or 3 teams in a relegation battle. Who's going to turn up and watch them if they're not going to get relegated?
And again,
There are
probably citing that would be the New
issues
Zealand
both
angle.
sides. I get your issues and sort of agree the fact that there are in that IPA Championship. There aren't that many teams that would come up, and I sort of get the idea of ring fencing, but then ring fencing works with if you have then control of your players to allow you to develop players and grow the sport. But then we're never going to get centrally contracted to the RFU. I don't think the clubs have too much power, so there's a whole lot of issues there that you'd have to figure out in my mind before you ring fence.
Very briefly, will Jordan Murphy? What will happen to Leicester now? The rest of this, Dave Ellis actually. Ex-France. Was he at Gloucester with you?
No, he was at Gloucester before me.
Before you. So he is rumoured to be the defence coach that they're looking for.
And he hasn't coached since 2014, is that right?
He's fresh. He's been doing the... okay, you're sceptical.
Well, no, I don't know. I mean, obviously he did wonderful things with France at the time, and he's very unique, but he's very much similar to what everyone does now. He's about pressure and getting off the line and sort of
Line speed.
that is basically his line speed, and that's But at the moment, Leicester have line speed, but they're doing different things at the same time.
Okay.
So you've got.
We should say on him.
Yeah.
Is Jordan going to lead them to safety, to the top 4? It's so congested. Where will Leicester end up at the end of this season with Jordan Murphy now fully at the helm?
Well, who knows? I think what Jordan will have is belief and confidence to go out and play. Still, I don't see him going negative and going into. I think he looks. You've got to look at your squad and go, oh my God, look at these players. We can't.
Yeah.
We should never be down here.
No.
The players have to look at themselves and go, look how good. How many internationals we've got. There's no way we should. And it takes a little bit of onus from the players to go, right, lads, we've got to sort this out. We're too good to be where we are.
They're 10 points away from third place.
Yeah.
And they're 2 points away from the relegation battle. This is absolute incredible scenes, isn't
The
it?
problem is Six Nations. They will lose Youngs, Ford, Tuolangi.
Question mark.
Question mark.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Genge potentially. I mean, we'll come on to him in a moment too. Let's move it on because I want to sort of pick up on the greater malaise of the English clubs in the Heineken Champions Cup last weekend. Newcastle lost to Edinburgh, teetering. Toulouse beat Wasps, who are out. Leinster thrashed Bath, who are out. Gloucester lost to Exeter, which pretty much puts a bullet through both.
You can't really say it's a bad weekend for an English
but in
club
doing that, what I'm saying is that in doing that, both of them are now pretty unlikely to qualify.
No, it's still open, that group.
Well, it's still open, but okay.
It was a negative.
I'm trying to build the story here. I'm trying to sort of,
It was a disastrous weekend for English rugby.
I mean, how much money would you put on another English club other than Saracens making the quarterfinals?
Well, you're not going to get a second team.
I rest my case.
Yeah, so
Same as last year.
What?
The year before, Wasps and Sarries, quarter-finalists.
Yeah.
But that's the reality. It's been a good weekend
realistically,
for
the English teams who played against the best 3 teams in the competition at the moment. If you look at Leinster, Toulouse, whether people say Toulouse won't come unstuck, but they're sort of the underdog, aren't they? And Leinster. So
And Racing.
Racing.
So
Yeah, but with I mean that in years gone by, English clubs and English fans would not have accepted we were playing the English clubs used to have the ambition to be the best. At the moment, it feels that they are tier 2 in Europe.
Well, no,
is that fair?
at the moment, they are.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's apart from
Why?
Sarries, no one's. I mean, Exeter, you'd say they just threw those first couple of games away, didn't they? They just didn't play.
Yeah.
With the draw and then they lost, didn't they? If they draw
in France, Montpellier, I think they lost to
Yeah.
in France.
But they are still. I'd still class them as a quality team now. I think that would be the only team that might be able to get through now with its results, with the games that it's got left. But I know it's a tough order. But if any team, I wouldn't. But if any team could do it in the way,
Still got to get a Munster.
Yeah, but I think they could win in Munster.
Okay.
That's how good that team is. You don't win 8 out of your 9 matches in the Premiership and being a bad team and not being able to go to Munster and win.
No, but it's interesting, and lots of journalists picked up on the fact that they haven't been able to transform their domestic form into Europe. I don't know whether. I mean, we used to speak a lot on Sky about how long it would take a side to get comfortable at the sharp end of Europe, and you look at Sarries, who had years of being knocked out by Clermont in the semis. Munster went years and years and years of semi-finals, finals, back to semi-finals, quarter-finals. And Exeter, you feel, are on that journey. But I wonder nowadays, with the new format and only 20 teams, not 24, whether that is still a reason, or whether there is something sort of... And when you look at the English clubs in general, whether there is a reason that English clubs are not stacking up at the sharpest end at the moment.
The Exeter example is interesting because they try and play this very dominant upfront game which works well in the Premiership where they can grind teams down, but against a French outfit it's a different concept completely because you've got players who, I mean, look at Racing, case in point, they have an inside and outside squad when they play in their arena at home. They've just got such resource that they're almost on a different level. When you try and match that physicality, and Montpellier, who are just freaks of human beings when you see them, the live games I've been to watch when they're there, it's just staggering how big they are. So there's a very different prospect playing against the big European teams and the Irish teams. And I know this gets slated every time everyone mentions it, but if you can rotate a squad such as they can, then that's going to help. The Premiership is brutal. And it's not an excuse for English teams. It's just a different way of looking at it. I'll let you go for the Irish comments.
Do you want to back that up? You can't resist.
What?
Come on. Now Rob's coming along and sticking life into the Irish as well.
I was going to stick with France in terms of you look at their wage bill to our wage bill. They can have strength in depth. You look at how they can stack their reserve squad, and we can't.
So is this going to become a bigger problem? I mean, as money talks and as squad size becomes a bigger factor, is it getting harder and harder for English clubs to get back to semi-finals and finals? Well, Sarries obviously have got a chance, but en masse.
Yeah, and Welsh clubs. I think Scotland are punching above their weight, but post-World Cup, what's going to happen? You're going to get a lot of very talented rugby players migrating to France because of the salary cap. That's it's probably likely going to happen.
Interesting. I mean, there is still a lot of money in the English game, and I'm sort of looking at Bath in this regard, who have got one of the biggest benefactors in the sport in terms of the capabilities. I know he's ring-fenced by the salary cap, but for a club who is the first English club to lift the European Cup, I mean, Bath have gone a very long time without a trophy and are pretty much out of the competition already this year. When you look at the club you sort of started with, what are you seeing right now?
I think they're a little bit confused. We talk about identity, a little bit confused on what they are. They sort of had a resurgence, didn't they, where they got to the final against Sarries in the Prem final, but then they've never really kicked on from it. You go back to there when Ford was on fire, Josephs, Anthony Watson, Banahan. You looked like you had a forward pack that was really sort of coming through, whereas it's just not really kicked on now. I don't know what the factors are around that, because you still look at that squad and look at the players and think you've got a good group of players there. You should be able to have the ability to win, but it just seems to be consistency levels of performance. They can be up here, but then they can drop to sort of 50%. And why that is, I don't know. You don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on behind the screen, behind the scenes. Do you? You're been fans since you were 12 or whatever.
Those days are long gone now.
You don't support them anymore. Okay.
Well, I'm neutral in every way, as you can imagine. But
being a true pro.
In all honesty, I did grow up at the Rec. I find it hard to support them now. Not because there's not success, but I don't feel engaged with the club. I don't. Is this being controversial? I just ask questions, but I don't have an affinity for the club in the way that I used to. Now, obviously, I'm 38 and I'm older and I'm doing different things in my life, but I don't see a club that I'm desperate to kind of get involved in.
I mean, this is where it's difficult because from a Bath point of view, they invite me to so many events a year as an old player. So they do things at games. So I think I've been invited to 4 games this year. and then they do like an old boys dinner, which they sell out. So they've got a lot of trying to keep their ex-players involved, and obviously Tricky does quite a bit.
Yeah.
Mearsey still kicks around there a bit, I think. And obviously Flats used to be there. So they do try and keep the players involved, but as you say, are they still managing to keep that sort of feel on the field? I don't think they are.
No.
But then, as professional rugby, as it's evolved, has it changed that sort of? We talk about Leicester and Bath, ironically, two of the giants of the yesteryear. And what they were in terms of sort of stature in rugby clubs, and I think the modern game has taken that out of it a little bit. And you look at Exeter's rise; it's sort of rose through that sort of era of everything changing a little bit, the way the laws have changed, and I think they've just had to adapt quicker and better. Whereas, do people who are always at the top think they can stay at the top by not actually looking back and actually changing?
Yeah.
I think they've maybe missed a trick, both clubs. I think Gloucester for a little while, I mean, I think thank God Johan Ackerman came in.
Yeah.
Because even if you go back 2 years before him, it was this club that was built on prestige. My last 2 years, we finished 5th, then we finished 9th. And then we finished 9th and 8th, I think, and then over the next 3 years. And it's only because Johan's come in and he's just sort of given this sort of freedom for
breath
the guys.
of fresh air.
Yeah, for the new rugby player that's out there who wants to just play and wants to play what he can see. And, we talked about the other day about the old guys who used to beat, if you did something wrong or you did something that's seen exuberant, you got a little slap on the back of the head, like, don't do that again. We just scored. It's like, but let's play territory.
We didn't score properly.
Yeah. So I think there's a bit of that goes on, and I think maybe those two clubs have missed the boat a little bit.
I suppose the difficulty for Bath at the moment as well is there's so much sort of change up top, and we understand that Stuart Hooper's going to become director of rugby, Andy Rock performance director. Rumours around Stuart Lancaster. Can you shed any light on that?
All three at Leeds. Yeah. Interesting. Hoop's one of the best leaders I've ever come across, both in business and sport, in terms of the way he speaks and holds himself and sets those values. So he's a great appointment. Andy Rock is, not many people would have heard of him, but he's done great things in academy level. He's then moved that up into a little more senior role. I think that's a great appointment. I just like the fact that I've got real clarity about here is our long-term plan. Everyone read it.
But is that benefiting them at this point in time, or are the players focused on 18 months in the future?
Well, players is a different concept. I'm talking about like the stakeholders and supporters of the club. You have got a clear understanding as to what it is we're trying to do. Results might well waver, which in a sense buys a little bit of time for the players to get their act together. But
then would you say that you had to put that out in public, or could you have that in your little boardroom and you can? But then, because if you say that to the players, they're like, well, it doesn't really matter if we don't impress Todd Blackadder anymore. Or
Andy Rock got invited to a few more dinners, I imagine.
Yeah.
Hoops, how are you going, mate? I haven't spoken to you in ages. How are you getting on? Do you want to come for a beer? But no, it's interesting. I think you're right.
Well, yeah, it's just how you motivate players, and as you say, does that motivate players if they know they've got a long-term plan that's not the plan that's in place now? They just have to get to the end of the year. But again, I don't buy into that, because personal pride should be kicking you in the ass if you're not playing well.
Yeah.
Is Stuart Hooper the man to deliver the glory years back to Bath? 1996, the last time they won the league, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, we haven't won it since I was
98
The
was
European
Europe.
ones, right?
We won Europe.
Yeah, won 98 in Europe.
98 Europe. That was the first year.
But no, I think
days.
Hoops, in terms of like inspirational people, I mean, Christ, he'll be a few years older than me. He'll be about 36. He's still young. But what a great leader. I mean, if he can't get you in the right place, there won't be many people in rugby that can.
Wow.
He is a brilliant person. And anyone that's ever worked with him will tell you the same.
Okay. Lanny?
Who would leave that job that he's got at the moment? That's the thing. Like, it's a great position to be in. There was rumours around the Ireland connection, what might well happen with that, with Farrell obviously then put in front of him. So I don't think Lanny would move down to Bath to do that. I think there might well be an international...
Too northern.
Well,
Too far south, isn't it?
Too far south. Drinking shandies and everything.
I just don't... why would you take that?
Because
for every reason,
because it's a massive club that has underperformed for 20 years. They're getting a new stadium. They've got the ingredients in the backer to polish a diamond.
You look at it from the outside and you don't see... Well, you've said they've put out their plan, but still you don't see that as you're watching it. So it's like...
But that's it. You've got to give the man to come in and make it happen.
Yes, but he's just worked his way back up. He's gone. He went down to the Southern Hemisphere. He's paid his dues for the bad spell that he went out with. He's the only loser in that if he goes there. He's got to
bank balance, which might be a big winner.
He's got to do a fantastic job
where
where he's worked his way back up to where he is now at Leinster, and it's like, why would you?
But at some point, Stuart Lancaster's going to want to take a top job again.
It will want to take a top job, but it'll be either a top team in Ireland again. It will either be it won't obviously be Leo's job, but it'll be a top team in Ireland, or it'll be a team that's sitting at the top of a league consistently. Why would you ever risk what you're playing now, or it'll be an international job? If you look at the things that were said to him about RFU and what they want, is they always wanted people who have had success on international stages, and that's the only thing. I mean, Lanny he obviously won a Grand Slam, but then he's got to
I
then.
think he did. He won titles, but not Grand Slam. They came second. I think they came second 4 years in a row, didn't they?
Did they not win it?
No, that was Eddie. 2016.
Year.
I think they came second 4 times in a row.
Since he's given him the moral victory because it was Lanny's squad when Eddie won it, but it was that game in Ireland where they lost.
It was 2016 they won the Grand Slam.
But then, all right, fuck you.
I'm here to bring the detail.
Your accuracies.
Don't bullshit a bullshitter.
But and he will. I think he will look to go and have success on an international stage rather than. Oh, if I was him, I would. I don't think I'd look to take a 50-50 job that could go either way.
And he's so much more savvy now with that. Like there was a time where he would take a challenge. Clearly, he's done 2 or 3 big steps in his career, but having been so burnt badly, from that England fallout, and I don't think people appreciated how bad he was. He was like living on his parents' farm for.
My other point to that would be Bruce Craig. How much control do you have? I mean, I've met Bruce numerous times, and he's fine to.
Well, answer your question.
No, I think he'd be quite hard to work under, and I feel he would probably interfere a bit and try and not pull out the old "I played when I was 15" sort of thing, but he'd ask those questions, and I just don't think you need that if you're a man of Lanny's stature. I think you just want to have come in and the owner give you full
autonomy,
control.
I've got a few ideas, lads. Oh, shit, here we go.
Well, I know. I only say this because when I once had dinner with Bruce Craig, and he talked to me about scrummaging, and he said, "Why are we not live scrummaging every day?" Because at this point they were getting pinged quite a bit. I think it was Flats actually. He was getting pinged quite a bit. And he said, "Why are we not live scrummaging every day?" And I was like, "Well, you wouldn't have a scrum on the weekend. You'd have no one fit." He's like, "But we're not doing well at scrum, so we should live scrum every day." I'm like, doesn't quite work like that. And that's the sort of thing that then if you start saying that to you, you'd blow your head as a coach.
Yeah. Sounds like a bit of a poison chalice, really, isn't it?
Well, no, because
and
also,
it all extrapolates.
But then also, if you do your homework about players, you'd probably back you with players, you see. So it's just having that.
Sam Burgess.
Back to Lanny again.
Well, yeah.
We're going around in circles a little bit. It's interesting, though, isn't it? I mean,
Again, you're saying it like Sam Burgess was a bad idea.
No, I'm not saying it was. No, I'm not saying it was.
We'll go back to the same conversation we had.
I'm not saying he was a bad idea. I'm just saying a classic example of the most talented rugby league player of his generation, the hardest rugby league player of his generation, coming over and being messed about between club and country, and people, owners and directors of rugby on one side wanting him to do one thing and play at 6, and England wanting him to play at 12. And the fact that they couldn't maximise a talent like that, I think tells you quite a lot.
That's an issue.
I'm not blaming Burgess. I'm just saying
that's an issue when the RFU unofficially gets involved in wanting a player to come over.
Wow.
It wasn't official, was it?
Do you want to expand on that?
Well, no, they're not. They weren't. Technically they weren't involved in that decision at all, were they?
No.
They weren't allowed to be.
No.
Well, whether they, I'm pretty sure there was probably a little word in the ear of somewhere. But obviously we can't state that
very
as fact.
cryptic Christmas show.
But I think that whole scenario was just absolute chaos from the start, and the only loser really in that was Sam and his experience of what Premiership rugby was,
which is a shame. Should we move on? I sort of want to bring some festive cheer. I feel we're sort of going down some fairly dark spouts here.
Let's talk about the French then.
Well, no, because I'm going to move it on to. We're going to move on to Ellis Genge in just a moment, just after we've reminded everybody.
Really liven it up.
Yeah, exactly.
For Christmas.
You're watching the House of Rugby on Joe, together with Guinness.
Still to come. The boys are going to take on the Perfect Paw. And we're going to assess the state of mental health amongst former players. I'm not laughing, obviously, at the topic of conversation. Just, we'll sing carols to say goodbye or something like that to give you your Christmas cheer. First of all, though, the England prop Ellis Genge has opened something of a can of worms this week regarding class in the game. I'm sure most of you have heard about it, read about it. In an interview this week, he said, "When I was 16, 17, 18, I never made any of the age group teams. I feel that's because my face didn't fit. I'm not white middle class, I'm working class. I don't want to put it down to race. I don't think it's about that, but I'll put it down to culture. The way people are raised and brought up, there's that private school mould in rugby. It's stopping the game from progressing and it's painful. And we have a very diverse panel here. We've got a member of the royal family. I'll hold my hands up to being privately educated, and you are man of the people.
Well, you said that. It was a public school, but it was in Hull. Does that count?
Well, anything that far north of Watford Gap
Public school, but it was in Wakey.
Yeah, exactly. If you like your stats, in the most recent England training squad, 18 of the 36 players went to fee-paying schools for at least part of their education, 50% as a result, and that's compared with the national average of just 7%. Does he have a point? Is it a problem?
If you'd have asked me when I was coming through, I said, hell yes, it was a problem. And selectors had motives and they had to pick certain people from certain schools, and there was definitely a long time ago when I was there, and it was a public school sport. There's no hiding away from that. I've felt, or what I've seen over the journey, is it has changed a lot.
Yeah.
But obviously he feels, if he still feels it, then there must be some sort of issue there. I mean, for example, how he's not at Gloucester, I have no idea. It seems he went to Hartbury.
Yeah. He's a Bristol boy, born.
So how he's not around at one of those clubs, either Bath, Bristol or Gloucester, I don't know.
Well, he said in the same article he had to move out of Bristol because he got one or two sort of problems that he didn't want to
go into a few scrapes.
So he's gone to the Midlands instead.
Right. But I felt that there was that when I was growing up. I mean, I always say that I never got picked for any age groups really until 18.
Yeah.
And then I only really got there because of Jeff Wappett, who was the England 18s coach, who was Bradford Grammar School head coach, and he liked me.
Do you and a genuine question, do you genuinely believe that was because your face didn't fit, or because at that stage you weren't good enough?
No, I think I'm not going to go back to 15s and 16s because I might not have been good enough back then. I only just moved to centre back then.
Where did you start?
I was back row, I was 8.
Were you really?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
So
at 15 you went from 8 to centre?
14. So like that year.
Love it.
But then 18s, I would have felt that sort of North Trial, actually Bolsh did me a little bit in the North Trial, but I played really well in North Trial. Bolsh stepped me once, the little bastard, my best friend.
Does he still go on about it now?
No, but then the next time he had another 2-on-1 and I thought he was going to dummy again, so I absolutely ended him, but he passed the ball and they still scored. But
you got your shot on.
I got my shot on, yeah, don't worry, he had it. I do feel that I played better than the guys that got picked ahead of me, which ended up showing in the fact that Eddie Jones, so there was a guy called Simon Brading, obviously Tom May, and I got my shot. Tom May went on study leave and Jeff put me in. Yeah. And then obviously they never got back in.
Yeah.
So I do think, but that's a long time ago. That's 97.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that over this time, the amount of clubs that now feed into feeder clubs that are in, and I don't think that it's all school based.
Yeah.
I think there's a big issue for kids at the moment between picking between club and school. I think there's an issue there in the fact, I'm hoping that you know more about it than me. Yeah. But I see a lot of kids who are 14 and they have to choose between whether they pick their school team or their club team. Whereas, and some play twice a week, and I don't think that's right. And
what you haven't alluded to there, Tins, is when the Yorkshire setup started for your 18 and 16 as well, there was a Yorkshire clubs and a Yorkshire schools.
Oh, yeah,
you basically get the posh lads against the hard rugby lads.
Been quite a battle.
Quite a lot of leagues as well in there.
Never ever would the schools beat the clubs because it'd just turn into a brawl and you'd get your head kicked in, basically. Right. So there's no denying there's elitism in rugby. It's named after a public school. Yeah. There is, and you got to put your hands up there. Fair play to again saying it. I think that the message you just finished on there, Tins, is exactly right, because now it's not about your school. It's not even about your club. It's about the academy and how you get into that process. It's irrelevant of what school you're at. So I get that he said his face doesn't fit. I would suggest that were more about that rugby club in West Norwich from in Bristol, not been necessarily the right type of rugby club for him. Not that his face didn't fit, and I don't know, I'm speaking on his behalf here, but if you're having sausage and chips and someone's looking at you dodgy, that might be nothing to do with your class or not fitting. It just might be something you've said previously, or you just don't know. And I grew up in Hull, playing at Hull Rugby Club, where there were absolute juvenile delinquents in our rugby club, thugs.
You were one of them, yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of marshaled them around. And they're like,
Hasn't
that
rugby
started
done
the
well
fight.
for you?
Yeah, like,
Started
to
to
go,
fight the
told them
leg.
what to do.
Yeah. And that would be not commonplace. You wouldn't look at them differently because they're from a council estate. They're just rugby lads.
Yeah.
So, and that's what rugby, for me, does very well. It gets the traits, and you talk about the values rugby has, and it makes people understand that it is about respect and sportsmanship and, shaking hand after you've just tried to whack someone for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
That's what rugby's about. And it might well be elitism from one perspective, but another person would argue that the values all transcend the game.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, you go into those stats. 18 of the 36 players in the England squad. There are quite a few asterisks there of kids who've been offered scholarships. I know Farrell went to a fee-paying school at 16, 17, 18. I think it was Billy. I think scholarship at Harrow, Mako at Millfield. I could be wrong on this, but I know. Right. Marrow, I think, as well at Harrow as well. So I mean, is that giving a child with a talent in sport the chance of something? Perhaps a more rounded education in inverted commas. And is, can we begrudge them that?
Well, no. And if you're going to move on to where we're going to move on to in the future, you want them to have the best education they can have and take their chances to give themselves another option if things go wrong. And that, this is where it comes down to, again, what we talk about the academies and how the clubs and the schools work, is it's got to be what's best for that player in terms of where he play and how his progression through the academy, but still managing to keep his education going. Is because I think we're on a teetering point, and you'll probably know more about this than me, that you could just end up being like a YTS sort of scheme that football do, and you forget about your education and you suddenly just into the profession. And we don't. I would never want that, because I think smarter individuals make smarter rugby players. But
it's not just England, actually. I was just very quickly jotting down. Hilton in South Africa is fee-paying.
Well, they are very school-based.
Yes, they are. But then you go New Zealand. Auckland Grammar has produced more All Blacks than any other. I don't know what the school in Australia is. Hamilton Boys.
New Zealand and Australia. Probably not so much Australia, because the problem with Australia is
there's in Australia, but they're so big.
It's so big, and there's basically everyone competing in Sydney with NRL, AFL. So the South, and then Rugby Union probably comes in third in the grand scheme of things. Even
if you think Australia have got quite a strong with Randwick and all those teams, they've got quite a good strong club behind, like base. Where they and I love the fact that they play every game on the Saturday on the same pitch, so you can turn up at like 10 a.m. and watch rugby till like 6 p.m. It's just going all the way up the age groups and then the grades and everything else. So
and then you drop all the way back down. Tins rocking out for the 15 at 10 o'clock, and then on the tins for the final.
Popping his teeth back in. There's a question here which I'd love to ask. True or false? The Premiership club that cracks the class divide will win an awful lot of trophies. And probably I'll add supporters to that as well. Or is it just incidental? Is this an isolated flashpoint on the topic, or is it something that needs to be addressed and the opportunity needs to be
I would say that I don't know enough about it to comment. I would hope it isn't, because I hope when you're paying your academy managers and your the guys who
talent ID now, isn't it?
Yeah,
beyond just.
I mean, they're going out to all sorts of schools. They're not going out just to private schools to watch. They're going to smaller clubs, Gloucester area, you've got hundreds and hundreds of clubs, and they go around there, and you hope they're throwing a big net over everyone and pulling everyone and pushing them as far as they can go.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a bit in the schools, and I work in both public schools and state schools, and the biggest issue is resource. Because if you go to a private school, there's a head of rugby, there might be a head coach and staff that generally know much about it. You go to the state schools, they only get an hour a week if they opt into doing PE, doing games outside. Is rugby complicated? Yes. Do the teachers then think it's dangerous because they don't know enough about it? So the easiest option is to not do it. So I definitely think if you could crack the comprehensive schools and go back to like the grammar schools and whatever might well happen, if you get those people playing rugby, and it might not be 15s, I'm not necessarily saying it'd be 7s, but the rugby, the rugby 5s that's coming along.
Yes,
Rugby X.
Rugby X, that's right.
Yeah, and that might well be a vehicle in, because all people want to do is get kids active, which is a massive part of it. And again, it gives you the values that if they do rugby in a school, you get used to very quickly building your resilience, getting whacked and getting back up, quite simply, and then just
teamwork.
Generally, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and getting rid of a bit of aggression for some kids. It works. School hard knocks. It's a great model.
Yeah. It's a very interesting subject, and obviously, well done to Ellis for shining a light on it, and hopefully there will be a sort of progress and resolution as we go. And we'd love to have him on the show, actually. So if we'll get Hask to dial him up, and the baby Rhino, it'd be great to have him on. Wouldn't it? I imagine he takes no prisoners.
He'd have to wear like the old goggles.
Oh yeah, the guy exactly.
You'd have
Yeah,
to wear that.
always welcome. So yeah, we'd love to have him on and to discuss it in more detail. The final sort of hot topic, and we've touched on it already. Some staggering figures, really. Last week, the new numbers from the Rugby Players Association revealed that 62% of retired players have suffered mental health problems since leaving the professional game. 52% said they felt they had no control over their lives 2 years after retiring. 46% said they were unhappy with their preparation for life after sport. And 50% said they faced financial difficulties in the first 5 years, which makes you gulp a little bit, because these are guys putting their bodies on the line for the entertainment of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions at the international level. 62% of retired players have suffered mental health problems. Is that a statistic you identify? You're scribbling down, Rob, while you're doing that. Is that a number you relate to and you can understand?
Look, mine with this, it's being very careful on the sort of levels that what it is.
Yeah.
You know, when I first retired, did I think, what am I going to do? Yes. Did I sort of say yes to anything that came up because I wanted to fill a day, because you're so used to coming out of this regimental system where you know exactly...
Playing Medal of Honour for hours on end.
Not at the end, my friend. Not nowadays.
At what point did you panic about life after rugby?
Now, you don't really have that much time for gaming.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Lies. Well, Fortnite gets hit pretty
well,
hard.
I didn't, but then maybe Fortnite was...
We're just saying yes to all the
phone.
options of breakfast, I think that way.
Possibly.
So at what point, how long before you put your boots to the back of the cupboard did you think, shit, I've got to start really concentrating on what I'm going to do when I put the boots to the back of the cupboard?
Look, I'm not going to say that I don't think I ever... how I finished my career, you know, with what I managed to achieve, I've been very lucky.
Yeah.
And then also who I married, I was very lucky also.
I wondered if you were going to say, I wasn't going to go there, but I wondered if...
It's all about relevance in terms of... And, you know, you can't hide away from what you are. And, you know, I still had the thoughts, though, because I class myself as quite an honest bloke and I don't want to just not do anything and take things for granted.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it is a challenge to go off that. So, you know, finding your way is difficult unless you have done the study whilst you're playing, prepared yourself. I mean, unfortunately, it can end in an instant. It can end at 22. It can end at, you know, I was very fortunate to roll through.
Were you the last one of 03 to retire?
Technically, but Johnny Bolsh and myself just finished the same year, basically. Just I happened to be
Ian Bolsh,
later.
the Peter Pan of rugby.
Yeah.
You three slumming it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, in terms of my next step is, you know, you've won a World Cup. You're obviously in the family that you're in. You keeps you very, very relevant and very, you know,
brings you opportunities.
Yeah, and I was always quite good at making friends with sponsors, at being social. I was very good at being social. So then you get opportunities off the back of that. I worry about players who might not... I never had any residual issues about what I'd left on the field. I didn't have finish on an injury and what might I have been able to achieve or what didn't. I pretty much got as much as I could.
Yeah.
I'll always say, I wish I was a Lion, but I wouldn't change what I have just to have that tag.
Yep.
So I finished pretty happy with where I was, and I knew that I was frustrated last year in terms of the way the game was going, so I was quite happy.
Yeah.
Whereas it's the people who are the players who don't quite get to that level, or they might have finished, they might have played 19 years for the same club, but they've never really hit that international. They've always just been that solid club player. They might be in the championships. They might have been 19 years in the championship, playing for, I don't know, between 10 and 30 grand.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they've lost everything that they've been used to, and whether they've had the ability to then upskill themselves, that's where I would worry about. It's not, you know, that's what I want to make sure that people have a pathway to be allowed to succeed when they finish rugby. But I know that.
Did you do the questionnaire?
I did do the questionnaire.
Is this an RPA questionnaire?
Yeah.
I did do
Probably
it. I did do the RPA.
What is the questionnaire?
It was
I can't remember now.
a load of questions around your state of mind,
It was a
asking
while ago,
questions about how you feel your finances are going. So,
And is this at the point of retirement, or is you leading up to retirement?
This came out.
They just did a
it's on
blanket
recently.
one, yeah.
Right.
The one you just read the figures from. So
Right,
that's
sorry,
why
I didn't
I
realise
actually
that had come
think
from that.
it probably underestimates when people put a comment down. And if you were to ask me, do I have mental health issues? Absolutely not. But did I answer positively some of the questions? Yes, because I'm a freelancer. I don't know where my income's coming from.
Yeah.
So therefore, I can't say I'm confident about my sustainability.
Yeah.
And I'm very much the other side of the scale to Tins, being one of those players that didn't quite hit the heights in 15 certainly. So what I talk about is this wider well-being piece, and everyone's in the same category here. Your well-being is measured by 5 different elements. You've got social, career, community, physical, and financial, which is obviously for people finishing the bigger issue. And as soon as you finish playing rugby, you lose control of all 5 of those elements.
Yeah.
And the biggest one that people probably underestimate, they think finances. Actually, I'd say it's more about physical.
Oh, really?
Because you're not training as much. Your brain is not as active. You are not doing the things that put you in such prime condition. Because you were an athlete, you've then got to work, often 5 times as hard for a fifth of the salary. Of course, that's going to be hard to take. So this transition, and I see it all the time, and partly as an RPA alumni representative, I have conversations with ex-players, and if they say, first off, yeah, I'm doing all right, I'll be like, now how are you really?
Yeah.
And actually probe that question a little bit further, because it's bloody difficult, but it'd be the same for anyone who at 28, 29, 30, and if you're looking like Tins at 36, fall off a cliff for anything you've known and had weekly targets and focus and clear commitment to your industry. You don't have that. And it's a flipped career because you can be 21, 22, 23, earning incredible salaries, the top of your profession at mid-20s that other people would have to work 40 years to get to. And whilst your mates are all there going to uni, become an associate, potentially director by 30, you then go to the bottom of the rung. And that can be really difficult. And the Champo, without going into it too much because it'd be another podcast, but it is the Wild West. You look at these Premiership teams, for me, you're in a bit of a bubble there. You've got community, stakeholders, those 5 pillars again, pretty strong. You got brand, Champo, 12, 15, 20 grand salaries, taking yourself away from employment, finish, without any necessary backing. That is a frightening concept. I don't want to scaremonger here, but it is an issue.
I can't remember who I was chatting to who was in my social circle, and they had their cousin who'd had the opportunity. He was playing like Div 1 and he had the opportunity to go professional at the Championship, and it was something he couldn't turn down because the money was quite nice for him. And
is this rugby or football?
Yeah, rugby.
Yeah.
And eight weeks in, he was like, "Why have I done this?"
Really?
He just didn't he just couldn't get his head around the grind, and he couldn't. And then he was
and walked out.
I think he's still sticking it out because he's got his contract, so he's going to stick out his contract. But yeah, he's
doing it for money, not love.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the identity thing as well, and how difficult that is for a player when you are lauded on the World Sevens stage and when you've won a World Cup and you're playing in front of 15,000 at Kingston every week? How much you miss that, and how much that affects you? And I know you've moved into a different sort of.
Yeah, I've always been very level-headed. I think I know where I'm from.
Feet on ground.
Yeah, I know I'm a lad from Otley and came from Wakey, and I was very lucky to get to the heights that I got to in terms of World Cup finals or whatever. But that you can't. That doesn't pay your bills, and well, actually, sometimes it does. But it's not what you build. It's not what I built everything on.
No,
I don't go around talking about when we won that game.
But it's
happened in the past. But I'm very good at just putting things in the past, whatever's happened.
Yeah,
and then you've got to look to the next thing. And I always remember, obviously when we won the World Cup, Ben Cohen and Steve Thompson basically quit the game because they were like, "Well, I've got to the top. What do I do now?" And we were all 24. Well, I'd just turned 25. They were 24.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, what's the point in playing?" Whereas I'd always gone, right, we've just got to make sure we stay at number 1 now.
Yeah.
But that was just my mentality. We didn't stay at number 1. 2004 was like, but that was how I dealt with it. Was always my way of looking at things. Is right. What's next? What do we go after next?
Yeah.
And because you can get yourself hung up on the past and your former glories, and it won't get you.
So let me ask a different question. You don't have to name names, but do you know people who you won the World Cup with in 2003 who have really struggled once the music stopped, so to speak? Or were most of you well enough adjusted?
No, I think quite well. You've also got to put into that. So a lot of that group had jobs before they started playing.
Yeah.
So our year was really the first year
Professional.
of going straight in
Yeah.
professional. So, everyone else had something to fall back on. They had a skill set. They had. So, I didn't really see it come out of that group.
Yeah.
Do you think it makes a
same
difference?
question.
Yeah, I get that, but I guess without anyone having that World Cup success since, it still makes your generation very relevant.
Yeah, that's very handy for us at the moment. The longer it takes for another English team to win.
Well, I was going to say, is there not a story
thing?
that when England went out in 2000, I don't know who it was, but they were two of your crew were sitting in the stand and one leant forward into the row and whispered in the air, 4 more years. 4 more years.
It might possibly have been.
Sure it doesn't.
It was all said in jokes.
Whoa,
with a little bit of truth.
Yeah.
It is the same, because the only other guys you were competing with really were the 66. Because for some reason, I don't think if cricket win the World Cup, don't think it's the
well, they did. They won the.
But I don't feel it's ever felt the same.
No.
Well, that's because there's probably so many different formats of it that I think that's why it probably doesn't feel the same. So you sort of feel that unless the football team go on and win the World Cup or another rugby team, you can always go 4 more years.
Great image of you all been there when the tank, if the tank next year in Japan, you're going, yes!
Yeah, another 4 years with them.
Get to the final.
Currency. But don't win it. It's probably worth just expanding on these numbers and saying that society as a whole is far more in tune with mental health at the moment than it ever has been. But I just wonder, can you see a way, particularly with your role with the RPA, that these numbers start coming down again?
Awareness is the big thing. So not only just with rugby, but I deal a lot with this in terms of the corporate side of things. People are generally now talking about their state of mind and actually asking questions. Are you okay? Sports personality Tyson Fury stood up in front of everyone and said, I'm 6'9", 19 stone, was the world heavyweight champion of the world. And if I'm saying I'm struggling mentally, I want to try and break this barrier. So it's great. I think society generally are going through this point now where everyone's talking about it. It probably then recalibrates slightly and come back a bit and understand about doing something about it preventatively rather than being reactive. And that's where sport is. It's such a new thing to talk about your mental health as a sportsman and say, actually, I'm not all right. Just as the same with the head and concussion symptoms are now becoming much more prevalent because, when I first started playing, there wasn't any recognition. Now there's a SCAT test, your concussion protocols. You have 25 questions. And if you are not 0 for them all, if you have one symptom of dizziness or memory loss or not feeling quite right, then you are removed from training and playing. So there's so many things that are happening to prevent it, which just need to be more commonplace.
Perhaps actually, I was just thinking, perhaps I asked the wrong question. Perhaps the numbers should be going up because it means more people are aware of it and talking about it. But hopefully there is a way. You were going to say?
No. I think you're right. I think the biggest change that has been in concussion are players are prepared to say, actually, I'm not right, because they understand what could go wrong if they then take the field again when they're not right. And I spoke to, when we played in the Veterans game against the French Legends for the Armistice, one of the Nick Wood refereed, but then one of the touch guys was a guy who had to stop playing rugby at 19, I think, because he got concussed on the field and then played on and got what they call double concussion. So he got knocked out again because he didn't come off. And it's led to a lot of problems for him. So it needs to be out there, and it's the same with the mental health issues. Is guys are ultimately not very good at saying, actually, I'm really struggling with this, and they just don't do it. They got the old adage of "I'm okay." I'm okay. I'm
fine. Yeah.
And it's breaking down that barrier first, and then assessing. Some problems will be small, but then you'll find some really big ones that you need to make sure you can get a handle on very quickly.
It's good to talk, someone wise once said, and hopefully the RPA and you can keep up the good work, and we'll make progress in this area, and hopefully there will be positive signs coming out sooner rather than later. It seems that awareness is the big thing now, and hopefully the next stage is for solutions to be found. Hard-hitting topics, but thank you very much. There's some wise stuff there.
The dark hour.
But sometimes,
Imagine Haskell in that hour.
Oh, I know. I mean, he would have probably just sat on the floor, switched off. I'd be amazed if he even gets to this point in watching a bat. He has terrible FOMO, so he always likes to listen front to bat, and he'll dress it up and say, well, occasionally he goes through it in minute detail.
I don't read the comments much.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to read the comments.
No, that is true. I think Chloe reads them to him. Right. We're going to finish with the Guinness Perfect Pour, which is our weekly test in 119 and a half seconds, because that is how long it takes to pour the perfect pint. This week it is an end-of-year quiz from the world of rugby, with a bit of rugby general knowledge thrown in at the end as well. It's a sort of fingers on buzzers, I think.
Do you know what would be really nice?
What?
Because it's almost Christmas. We've got Christmas jumpers, but
Yeah.
we still don't have a Guinness
I know.
to share the Guinness.
You need to put it on your Christmas list, and maybe they'll bring one next week for you.
Maybe.
Actually, I have to say, we've done enough of these shows now that really there should be some.
You won't be looking at that if you drink Guinness.
Can we get these framed
Do
as
you
well?
want me to sign those for
That'd be
you?
good.
Alex Payne compare.
The perfect
It does-
pour.
it does
For those of
look
you
a bit
listening,
miserable
you're not missing anything.
Google it. Men's Health.
Men's
6-week
Health,
transformation.
6-week transformation.
Painatron.
Painatron. Right, let's put you in your place.
Yeah.
Question number 1. Fingers on buzzers. Shout out the answer. You can conflab if you like.
I reckon Rob's going to batter me in this.
Who won the Sydney Sevens in January?
Definitely going to batter me.
Both Australia, men and women.
Ooh, I'm only going to give you 1 point, but you are correct.
Women didn't concede a point
In the whole
in
tournament?
the whole
That's
tournament.
ridiculous.
Stat.
Donkulous.
Who did Ireland beat in their Six Nations opening game?
Wales.
France.
Correct.
Ah.
Put the T next to that. How many games did England lose in this year's Six Nations?
3.
Oh,
Very good, T. Jacob Stockdale was the player of the Six Nations, the Guinness Six Nations, as it now is.
Ooh.
But how many tries did he score?
4.
Oh, I was going to raise 5. 6.
6.
7.
What?
7. Oh, no one gets that. 7 tries for Jacob Stockdale.
Oh, yeah.
Only one Premiership team qualified for the quarterfinals of the European Cup. Who were
Saracens.
they? Yes. Who scored all of Racing's points in the Champions Cup final? I will give you 1,000 points if you get this.
Oh, their points. So he has to be a kicker.
1,000 points.
No, he's too
They
good.
didn't score 1,000 points in the final. I will give you 1,000 points if you get it.
Machino,
No, Teddy Aribaran.
Yeah, I'll never get
I'll
that.
have that one.
Yeah,
New Zealand
Did you
beat.
know that?
I did.
Of
Well, I
course
did
he
the
did.
game, so yeah.
of course he did.
Failing in my day to day if I didn't. New Zealand beat Australia in the Bledisloe Cup earlier this year. Which player scored 30 points in the game?
Foley.
New Zealand beat Australia in the Bledisloe Cup this year.
Bowden Barrett.
Bone Barrett, 4 tries.
There's so
Tins
many
gets that by
Bledisloes.
default.
Yeah.
There are 3. Which duo made their test debuts for England against South Africa in Joburg? Both have the initials BS.
Bullshit.
Wasps and Saracens.
This is a terrible perfect pour,
Yeah,
isn't it?
this is
Blindside and scrum half.
Yes.
Ex-Hurricanes.
No, Ben
Spencer.
Shields. Ben
Yes,
Spencer.
you can have one each. Brad Shields and Ben Spencer.
Yeah, sorry. How far would you have gone with those clues, by the way?
Well, I was having to
Spelling
dig
their
quite
names.
deep. One's
actually-
called Brad Shields and the other's
BS
called Ben
is just
Spencer.
throwing me off. It was actually initials throw you off even more.
Who scored the winning points for Cardiff Blues in the Challenge Cup final against Gloucester?
Oh, Patrick.
Nope.
Yeah,
I thought you slid in for it. All right. No, all right.
Not the winning points.
I don't know.
GA.
I can't remember.
Anscombe.
Anscombe.
Yes. Touchline conversion.
Ah,
How the hell Gloucester blew that? I will
No,
never know.
yeah.
Who scored 3 tries for the Scarlets in the Pro 14 final defeat to Leinster?
Scarlets.
solid Welsh knowledge
Davies.
here.
No. Johnny McNichol, you'll never get that.
No.
Who captured the Springboks against Wales in Washington? Big, blonde, second row.
Steph Toy.
Correct.
Toy, yeah.
In what year did the 5 nations become the 6 nations? You should know.
2000.
Correct.
There we
Tim's
go.
gonna have that. In 2001, why did the competition end in October?
Foot and mouth.
Correct. That was
Yes.
a disastrous
It's
day.
Yorkshire
that was,
Farmer
wasn't
in that.
Yeah.
it? Memories of that day?
Well, I didn't play. I broke my hand.
Oh, yes, you did. didn't
And
you?
then I went back and trained, and Clive was like, "Are you sure you're not all right to play?" And I said, "Well, no, apparently not." So I didn't play.
No,
Hand and
that
mouth.
was a bad
Hand
day.
and mouth, yeah.
True or false? Hask listens to Walking in Memphis before a game.
Put on my blue suede shoes. I'll go true. Bit of Mark Cohn.
No.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
What was the name of the team that Hask played for in Japan?
Spears.
Sun.
No, he was the Goliath, was he?
No, he was with a Fuji or Fujitsu or
Which company did
He obviously made a
go
hell of
in?
an impression on the
Spears.
Super League.
Mitsubishi.
Rico Black Rams.
Black Rams.
You can have 7.5 points each out of 15. Because
How much do you get?
I got the rest. Whatever that might be. Reflections. We're going to do a Boxing Day show, actually, so we'll do reflections on the Boxing Day show.
What, of the year?
I
Of the
dread to
quiz?
think what sort of shape we'll be in at that point.
I
Of the
sort
quiz, of the
feel-
year as well.
I sort of feel that I should do some research on it, but I'm probably not going to
No,
bother.
don't.
I'm
It'll
just
make it more fun.
Yeah, we could do.
Because then you might get a perfect
If you've been a
ball
good
that
boy.
lasts 119 seconds, whereas No perfect pour should ever last that long.
If you've been a good
lasts
boy.
about 15 minutes from all the shows that we do.
It's 119.5 minutes. Heavy duty, but I've really enjoyed that. And it was nice to get stuck into some meaty topics. Thank you very much indeed. Are you excited about Christmas? Have you done your shopping?
No, I haven't
Right,
actually.
you've got to do some working quickly.
Yeah, a little bit. I guess going to Dubai and Cape Town probably doesn't help the Christmas
Duty free.
shopping.
Duty free.
This is it. Yeah, actually.
Have you
buy anything you want.
Have you written your
Right.
Christmas list? Have you been a good boy? Is Father Christmas going to come?
I'm always a good boy.
Oh, that was so seedy.
That was a little bit actually. On that rather dirty, sordid note.
I'm done. I've done all my
Said the
shopping.
matron to the
I'm
baker.
very organised.
Well done, you.
Who's bought them for you?
No, I've done my. I said this. I say this all the time about my wife. She is an amazing Christmas shopper. So she does the majority of it,
bails
and I
you
basically
out.
get.
You write
her
the labels.
Stuff. I
Love
basically
from
get
Mike.
her stuff, and then maybe a few things from Mia and Lena.
Have a very happy Christmas, both of you.
And you.
I think you look rather fetching. In
Thank
that
you
job,
very much,
actually.
Mark.
Oh, we know
we
he's-
have to
we
hand
know
them
he's-
back. They
we
go
know
back in
he's-
the dressing up box.
We
aren't
know
they?
his job for.
True, true.
in a
Santa's
week's
little
time.
helper.
I'm always naughty.
That is it for this week. Thank you so much once again for watching and for listening to the House of Rugby. We are a YouTube show and a podcast. I'm sure you know that by now. Please do leave us a review, as it really helps. You can also download some of Joe's other programming that you might have missed, including Unfiltered with James O'Brien and Boys Don't Cry with Russell Kane, one of Apple's top 10 podcasts of 2018. Hopefully we'll be a top 10 podcast of 2019. Rob Vickerman, thank you very much indeed. You won't be joining us again for your insults.
Do I get a ball?
No,
for a
you
hat trick?
don't. And if you're listening, as I said, you're missing out on nothing other than
We thought
some
you
fairly
might
average
even
banter.
get Guinness for your hat trick, but you don't even get that.
No, you don't.
either.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rob. Haskell will be back from his honeymoon on Boxing Day for a very special show with Mike and I.
Stories galore on that,
Stories
isn't it?
galore. God help us all. There's a rumour to come that we're going to be in costume.
It'll be like 50 Shades of Grey, won't it? I'll be
Sordid.
back.
A sordid Christmas debrief.
Yeah.
Thank you, fellas. Have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. We'll see you on Boxing Day. Thank you for watching and listening. Have a great festive season. See you then.
You've been watching the House of Rugby on Joe, together with Guinness. Drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.co.uk for the facts.